Welcome. Today, what I'd love to look at with everyone is kind of go back to our history and understand, how legend and rabbinic lore, midrash, kind of informs Jewish practice. And I know this class, generally, we've done some different things, but with Rabbi Jacobs, it started and primarily about midrash. But midrash is more than just legend and tales. It actually informs Jewish wisdom and Jewish practice in many ways. And I'm going to share here on the screen. If you could actually, I think the host is actually the screen in the room. So are you able to enable sharing there?
Let's see. The first thing we got to do is
click on participants, and then if you can make me a co-host, I should be able to share.
Can anybody read that?
Yeah, hold on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Got it. That's just you make co-host, yeah.
Yes.
You got it. Okay, thank you. Here. Yes, it's working. All right. All right. So what I'm going to put here on the screen, one of my favorite texts, actually. This is a text from the Talmud Yerushalmi. As you may know, there's actually two versions of the Talmud. The Talmud kind of compository of legal texts and debate between the early rabbis. And the more prominent and much larger version of the Talmud is the Babylonian Talmud, which was compiled in the diaspora in Babylonia. But there was also a version of the Talmud that was compiled in Israel, which is known as the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. And this text I've always loved because it gives some insight into the world of the rabbis. Ha'olel l'teatron. And this is, the rabbis are living in Roman times. And one of the major activities, today we have sporting events. We might go to the Browns game or the Guardians game or the Cavs game. What was the sporting event of the time? Were gladiator games. Does anyone want to share it? Does anyone have an idea? What happens at gladiator games? Anyone share?
People die. It's not the like fighting.
Right, people fight to the death, actually, right? And slaves were often thrown in. There were also professional gladiators, but there were basically fights to the death. And so the halacha is going to the amphitheater is forbidden as pagan worship. And so both gladiator games and also Greek performances, just like we would go to Playhouse Square. There were also, tragedies and comedies. But all of these things, anytime you would go to the theater, the amphitheater in Roman times, they would start by a tribute to the gods. And they would start with pagan worship. And so the rabbis say, halacha, you're not allowed to go to any of these things because it would start with worship to the Roman gods. And actually, right, the sages say, Rabbi Meir says it's forbidden. The sages say when they present offerings, it's forbidden because of pagan worship. Otherwise, it is only forbidden because of seed of scoffers. So if it happens to be a case where they're not sacrificing or making sacrifice to the gods, he says it's still forbidden, but for different reasons, because it's a place where the people ridicule God. All the people are pagan worshipers and non-believers in God. But there's a couple of reasons the sages say you might be permitted. One who goes to the theater to shout, if you read the notes here, the theater was actually where the community had direct access to make requests and demands of city leaders. If it is for a public need, it is permitted. If it is to enjoy himself, it is forbidden. So suddenly the rabbis are starting to come up with loopholes why you might be able to go. So they know this is a place where you see many of the city officials. If you're going because you have some grievance or something to share with the city officials, then it's okay to go. Here, yeah, one who sits in a stadium is a spiller of blood. As I mentioned, right, gladiator games, unlike today, you know, there might be injuries in sports today, but the purpose isn't to kill the opponent. In the gladiator games, that was actually the goal. In many cases, or was a common outcome at the very least in many gladiator games. And so it says that you're not allowed to. But Rabbi Nathan permits it for two reasons. Is there someone that wants to read Rabbi Nathan's reasons why it's permitted to go to gladiator games?
All right, can everybody hear? Okay,
Yeah.
Rabbi Nathan permits it for two reasons, because he can shout and save lives. If a wounded gladiator begs for his life, he can vote to let him live. And he can testify for a woman that she can remarry. If a Jew is killed in one of these performances, the spectator can testify that his wife is a widow and can remarry.
It's always a loophole.
So what's good? What's going on here? So the first statement right here, if the gladiator is wounded, maybe you've seen the movie The Gladiator, but what we understand from history is that the people actually gave a thumbs up if they wanted the person to live, or a thumbs down if they wanted the gladiator to finish the job on their opponent. And so Rabbi Nathan is saying you can perform pikuach nefesh, saving a life, by voting thumbs up to keep the wounded gladiator alive. And second, you can perform the mitzvah of identifying a deceased person, because if you're familiar, right, in traditional Jewish practice, a woman is not allowed to remarry if they are already married, unless they get a get from their partner, or if their partner dies. This has caused a problem historically. If a husband goes missing, the woman is in a challenging position according to traditional Jewish law, because if it's not known that her spouse passed away, she's not eligible to get remarried. Here, the person can testify that, oh, I saw that the husband is no longer alive, and will allow can be a witness that allows the widow, to get remarried. So what is happening here, though? What's the larger premise? Any thoughts?
We like to find a way to do something.
Yeah.
We like to find a way to do something. I'm actually wondering, and every time I see this text, it didn't make its way into the Babylonian Talmud. But I wonder if many Jews were going to gladiator games because it was the entertainment of the day. And they were going to do so whether or not the rabbis permitted it. I could see the same being true. If a rabbi suddenly said you're not allowed to go to Browns games or to NFL games, how many people would listen to the rabbis, and how many people would still go to the games? Right? Sorry?
Saying it's okay if you don't go to the Browns game because it's a wait and see.
So wait. Good.
What's interesting, as you said, if it was not, you would have expected it to be in the Babylonian Talmud, because if you were in Babylonia, you were closer to Greece and places where they would have it, and Italy.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm not sure, why it didn't. And different texts, made their way from one community to the other, and some didn't. But I wonder, I think it's fascinating how using these values that we hold dear, pikuach nefesh, and edut, serving as a witness to allow for remarriage, are overriding values. But it's an interesting, seeing how Jewish wisdom and rabbinic text, and rabbis grappled with the realities of their day. And and this is a real life example of, you know, what was happening. We also learn a lot about where the rabbis were living, and the place where they lived, with a text like this. That right, you know, in Israel, there were gladiator games, and here there were Jews going, and there were different reasons why, you know, it was permitted or forbidden, and how they're trying to find loopholes to allow for something that on its surface, you know, with sacrifices to the gods and with a place where one person may be killing another, you know, how permission, you know, was found. Yeah, Nelson. Oh, sorry. Nelson, it's muted. Sorry.
I'm sorry. How would a Jew be, how would a Jew be killed at one of these games?
Well, yeah, sorry, Nelson. Oh.
Yeah.
Either the person was enslaved and was forced, and that's probably the most likely scenario, where there might have been a Jewish person, is if they had somehow been taken captive, and were forced to participate, is the most likely result. Ezra, do you want to say hi? Oh, good. It's theoretically possible that there could have been a Jewish person who was a professional gladiator. I don't know of any, you know, specific cases, but we actually know, for instance, Reish Lakish, who becomes one of the great Talmudic rabbinic giants, before he became that, was kind of like a gladiator. So it's possible there were professional gladiators as well. Most of the people probably were not Jewish, but fighting in Israel, there was a likelier chance that there might have been Jewish gladiators or people forced to compete.
But also when the Jews lived in Italy and Rome. You remember the
Yeah,
Bible?
do you have the mic? It's a little hard to hear.
Wait,
They would have been,
wait, you need the mic.
The Jews lived in Rome. The Jews lived in Rome. And so therefore, they would have been exposed to it. You had,
Right, definitely they were exposed. And throughout the Roman Empire, certainly there was a Jewish community in Rome itself. And throughout the Roman Empire, you know, there was a large Jewish diaspora already. In fact, the city of Alexandria was split into 5 sections at this time, and 2 of the sections were considered Jewish sections of the city, kind of 5 quarters, if you will, and they were considered Jewish quarters. So there were Jews living all throughout the Roman Empire. Good. I'm going to move to the next text here. Go. So the next text that I have here, I was thinking about, you know, how rabbinic lore informs our identity and Jewish law. And it's always, this was just an example of how it kind of played into what Jews were doing at the time 2,000 years ago. Some of you, many may know this particular text. What do we think about the nature of the commandedness, of our commandedness from the laws? Yeah, not right now. Yeah. Yeah, just 1 second.
Say hello.
Can say hello, Lior and Ezra are here, unfortunately. But I'm going to share, if someone can read the text here. This is one text, one understanding of the 10 Commandments. And the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. We just celebrated this past, a couple of days ago on Shavuot. One of the texts and one of the, lines in the Torah, of course, the Jewish people are given the Torah and they say, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and then we will hear. But that's not the only text that comes out of rabbinic literature. And I'm going to see if there's a volunteer that wants to read, if you have the mic, that would like to read this text, and I'll scroll down as we move forward.
The Torah says, and Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the lowermost part of the mount. Rabbi Avdimi Bar Chava said the Jewish people actually stood beneath the mountain, and the verse teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, overturned the mountain above the Jews like a tub, and said to them, if you accept the Torah, excellent, and if not, there will be your burial.
Okay, pause there for a minute. We'll continue on. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard this story, but gives a very different understanding of the commandments. In this narrative, right, the commandments are really forced upon the people. They're there at Mount Sinai, and God basically says, right, he takes the mountain and turns it over them and says, accept this or else, right? Or else you're going to be gone, and the mountain is gonna crush you. So before we go on, any thoughts on this reading? And I'm sure some have read this and seen this text before.
Where's the text?
Yeah, can you? Where is this from? Are you asking? Shabbat. This is the Babylonian Talmud. Good. Any thoughts before we go on? Can you continue here?
Besides the whole version, just wondering, just in the reading, how do you get from the first part where it says that God brought them? How would the rabbi infer all of a sudden and change the narrative to holding the mountain?
Good. It's a good question. I don't have, I think it's just a different understanding. The rabbis are living in a time where they understand following the 613 mitzvot, especially in a world where they're surrounded by pagan worship and a world that doesn't follow the mitzvot in the same way, doesn't follow Torah. It's not so easy. And I think, in some ways this reflects a viewpoint that maybe we're not so eager to accept everything. So I don't know, but it's an interesting kind of counterpoint to many of the midrashim. People here. So do you want to continue? So this is actually the caveat here. I'll read from this story. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov said, "From here there is a substantial caveat to the obligation to fulfill the Torah. The Jewish people can claim they were coerced into accepting the Torah, and therefore it's not binding." And that's a principle in Jewish practice. When you're coerced to do something, it's not binding. It's like you can say, I was forced to break Shabbat. That it doesn't count as breaking Shabbat because it wasn't of your own volition, your own free will. We actually do the same thing when someone is providing a get, a writ of divorce, or a ketubah, for instance. You can't be forced to accept a ketubah or a get against your will. That or give a get against your will. The idea, I'm not saying what might have happened historically, but the virtue or the principle in Jewish practice is that it's not binding if it's done against your will. So Rava says here, even so they accepted again willingly in the time of Achashverosh, as it is written, and these are words from the Megillat Esther. The Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed and upon all such as joined themselves unto them. This is Esther chapter 9, verse 27. And he taught the Jews ordained what they had already taken upon themselves through coercion at Sinai. So he's arguing, even if we believe that this midrash is the true midrash, this is what actually happened at Sinai, the Torah still is binding because later on in the Bible, at the time of Achashverosh, Mordechai and Esther and the Jewish people of Shushan took it upon and accepted the Torah willingly. So, so this text really tries to get to the root of, why do we accept Torah? Where does Torah come from? And I'm gonna share quickly. I'm gonna jump through. I think you've studied this text about the four who entered the Pardes, which I'll jump over right now. But this is also a story of kind of trying to understand the origin of different interpretations of Torah. Rabbi Akiva who goes through and is actually the only one of 4 very prominent rabbis who actually makes it through the orchard and really gains mystical understanding. And this story is an origin story for mystical Judaism, Kabbalah, the Zohar, which is found in the Talmud as well. But I want to jump here to this story. I mentioned Reish Lakish, who was a gladiator. And we're going to see how Torah understand, or how Midrash understands the ability of someone to change and to become a great leader, even through not the best beginnings of life. So I'm going to ask if there's a different person in the room who wants to read here in English. This is from the Babylonian Talmud, Bava Metzia, about Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, who are 2 of the great figures in the Talmud.
I'm not in the room
Nelson.
without try.
Okay, Nelson can read, yeah.
The Gemara relates, one day Rabbi Yochanan was bathing in the Jordan River. Reish Lakish saw him and jumped into the Jordan, pursuing him. At that time, Reish Lakish was the leader of a band of marauders. Rabbi Yochanan said to Reish Lakish, "Your strength is fit for Torah study." Reish Lakish said to him, "Your beauty is fit for women." Rabbi Yochanan said to him,
Pause, yeah, Nelson, just pause for a second. So what's happening here? Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan is described in the text as being very beautiful, very handsome. And so Reish Lakish is kind of a retort. That here, Reish Lakish is leading a band of marauders. He's a thief. But Rabbi Yochanan sees his strength and says, you can use that strength for Torah study. And this is kind of a retort back to him, you're too beautiful, you should be right. Why are you studying Torah, in a sense? But yeah. And right. Okay, right, Rabbi Yochanan, yeah.
Rabbi Yochanan said to him, "If you return to the pursuit of Torah, I will give you my sister in marriage, who's more beautiful than I am."
Right. And that apparently, pause for a second, but that apparently convinces Reish Lakish that there is something in it for him. Okay. You want to continue?
Reish Lakish accepted upon himself to study Torah. Reish Lakish lost his physical strength as soon as he accepted the responsibility to study Torah upon himself. Rabbi Yochanan taught Reish Lakish Bible and taught him Mishnah and turned it into a great man. Eventually, Reish Lakish became one of the outstanding Torah scholars of his generation. One day, the sages of the study hall were engaging in a dispute concerning the following baraita. With regard to the sword, the knife, and the dagger, the spear, the hand sickle, and harvest sickle, from when are they susceptible to ritual impurity?
Yeah, I'm going to pause, Nelson. We're going to jump forward. So there's a big discussion here. When are these various weapons susceptible to impurity? And we're going to just jump. When is the completion of their manufacture? I'll read this because this is kind of the point of the story. Rabbi Yochanan gives an answer. It is from when one fires these items in the furnace. And Reish Lakish gives a different answer, from when one scours them in water after they have been fired in the furnace. And Rabbi Yochanan retorts or says back to Reish Lakish, a bandit knows about his banditry. I.e., right, you were an expert in weaponry because you were a bandit in your youth. And Reish Lakish takes a lot of offense to this, and this is what we'll talk about. He says, "What benefit did you provide me by bringing me close to Torah? There, among the bandits, you called me leader of the bandits, and here, too, they call me leader of the bandits. So here, I've studied, I've become this great Torah scholar, but you still seem to only think of me as a bandit, as a thief." Any thoughts on this? And I want to think about this idea because this idea, and rectifying the mistake that Yochanan makes and the offense that Reish Lakish takes is something we can do when someone new is entering our community. Maybe someone chooses to become Jewish. Maybe someone comes and has, things that are not so pleasant in their past. I think Reish Lakish. Yeah, Nelson?
I have a question about
Yeah.
Reish Lakish. Was he Jewish and a bandit, or was he not Jewish? and a
He's
bandit?
Jewish. He's a Jewish bandit. Yeah, as far as we know, yeah, he's Jewish.
But today we do the same thing to people, as you pointed out. Whatever your past is, we don't let you forget your past. And, we're supposed to. We're supposed to give someone a chance. And the Jews are no better than anyone else that way.
Right, and in some ways, right, Yom Kippur, and this is always a challenge that we have. You know, Yom Kippur, we ask for forgiveness. We're supposed to be, you know, we believe in being given a clean slate. But sometimes it's hard to let go. You know, or let go is not necessarily the right word here, but it's hard to not bring into account what you know about a person's history. And sometimes it's hard to give people a second chance. Even when we know that, you know, now in this case in particular, Reish Lakish is a great Torah scholar, one of the great Torah scholars of his generation. But in this argument, you know, Rabbi Yochanan, you know, reminds Reish Lakish, oh, you must know about this particular topic because of your history. Any thoughts? You know, what do you think about what Rabbi Yochanan did? Was it so bad? Is Reish Lakish right to take offense? And if so, why? If you can pass the mic, if there's anyone, yeah.
Maybe he meant it as a compliment. You know it because you have experience. I wouldn't take offense. I didn't think he was insulting.
Right. So it's interesting. So Tziona, yeah, I wonder, and when I first read it, Reish Lakish clearly takes offense, but it could be a benefit, right? Here, you bring your world experience into Torah. And I actually think there's something beautiful about that. And I know we do that here at our Thursday Lunch and Learn on Shabbat morning Torah study. And anytime we learn, I believe it's important, and we all have something to teach through our own unique experiences in life. So that's an interesting point. Yes, Stuart, did you?
Can I say something about it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I look at it at a different way. Like if we have a Gioret, we are not supposed to tell them their origin, that they were not Jewish.
Right.
So it's like forgiven, it's a white slate. You know what I
Right.
mean?
So I actually think this is different, right? And I think this falls more in line with why Reish Lakish is offended, because it is one thing, as I said with Tziona, right, to bring in your past experience, but when your past experience is seen as unworthy or reprehensible, in the case of Reish Lakish, he gets offended that Rabbi Yochanan is bringing it up. In the case of becoming Jewish, we don't believe that, and you know, we believe there's many paths to finding Torah. But again, right, it's not supposed to be brought back or reminded. We're not supposed to differentiate. A Jewish person is a Jewish person. There shouldn't be differentiation between someone who's a Jew by birth and a Jew by choice. Once, you know, you're Jewish, everyone should be, you know, treated and respected equally, without respect to their origin.
Rabbi?
Oh, sorry, there's someone in person. Yeah, do you have Judy?
Yeah, are there women who were harlots at one time and become true Jewish? I can't remember who now. Rachav is one, yeah. What, Tamar was not a harlot?
Yeah, what about Rachav? Yeah, Tamar?
No, Rachav was a harlot, right? But she was, I think she became Jewish at the end, right?
I don't think she was Jewish.
Rachav, I need to read back the story. I don't know that the story talks about her as being Jewish. I need to reread it. But Rachav is a great, she has fear of God. What it says at Yirat Shamayim, and she helps the two spies because she's a God-fearing person, and she's rewarded for that.
Rabbi, the discussion of the weapons is not he would be an expert on their utility and which one is better for which use or what's sharper or something of that magnitude, but not on their spiritual use or when they're dedicated. So
Right, correct.
his experience would not have been on this at the level. His experience would have been just about it as a weapon and not on its spiritual side.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Good. Nelson? Yeah. Did you?
Don't understand. He's an expert on maybe on how to use weapons. That was what he's being asked about. He's asking when do these things become the most dangerous? And they need to be
Right.
not just forged, but hardened in the water.
Right. When are they considered completed? Right, is the question that he's answering.
And so, I mean, that's a different issue. That's a technical issue. And why can't a Jew be a blacksmith and understand that issue?
Yeah. So definitely they could, but the way that he's responded to, you must know this because you were a bandit, is what I think Reish Lakish takes offense to.
Well, I would think he would know this because he was an expert in the use of weapons.
Right. No. It is.
Or is
I
this
agree, yeah.
a metaphor for baptism? Christians become Christians when they get baptized, and your weapon becomes hardened when it becomes baptized.
Yeah. Good, right. And there's a debate. We see from the text that Reish Lakish is upset by this, but there is an argument that could be made that Rabbi Yochanan is, he's just stating, yeah, you do have some expertise in this field.
It depends how, the way he says it.
Right, and maybe the way we don't, and this might be some insight into the way Rabbi Yochanan made his comment. We don't get that kind of context from the words themselves. We don't hear how they're being said. I want to look at one last text here also from the Jerusalem Talmud with you to understand the rabbis, an insight into the power of the rabbis to shape Jewish life. And this text actually is a text about the Jewish calendar. And it's from the tractate Rosh Hashanah. And I'll read here a little background for this, and maybe someone can share if you want to pass the mic around. Does anyone know how Jewish months were determined? Before today, we can look up any year, to infinity. We could look up any year and know what day Rosh Hashanah is going to fall on, what day each month is going to start. But a long time ago, they didn't have those kinds of calculations. Can someone share? Does anyone want to share how a new month was determined?
We needed 2 witnesses.
Right, thank you.
And not any 2.
Not right now. So right, 2 witnesses needed to come forward and say, we saw the new moon, the sliver of the new moon. And that was how the month was determined. That 2 witnesses came to the court and they were accepted. And then based on that calculation, you knew the middle of the month, certain holidays fell. You counted the days based on the month. So here there was an incident in which 2 witnesses came and said, we saw the new moon at its anticipated time, i.e. the night of the 30th day of the previous month. However, on the following night, i.e. the start of the 31st, which is often the determinant of a full 30-day month, it was not seen. So basically, witnesses came and they said they saw the new moon. But the next day may have actually been the right day because the moon wasn't seen the following day. Maybe the real new moon was really a day later. Nevertheless, Rabban Gamliel, who was the head of the court, the rabbinic court in his time, accepted the testimony and established the new moon on the 30th day. Some of you may know that sometimes Jewish months are either 29 days or 30 days. So here they accepted the 30th day as the beginning of the new month, where really sometimes it's the 31st day, and the story has some discrepancy, even though the 30th day was chosen. Rabbi Dosa Ben Horkinas disagreed and said, these two are false witnesses. How can they witness? And they give, this is not a real example, but how can they witnesses testify that a woman gave birth and the next day the belly is between her teeth, i.e. she is pregnant? In other words, if the new moon was already visible at its anticipated time, how could it not be seen a day later? Rabbi Yehoshua said, I see the logic of your statement. The new moon must be established a day later. So the short story here is there's a disagreement. Rabban Gamliel has accepted these two witnesses and decides that the month starts on day 1. And Rabbi Yehoshua hears the argument against that because of the circumstances and says, no, these witnesses can't be right because the next day actually is more suited based on the position of the moon to be day 1. So they disagree. One says the first day of the month is Monday. The other says the first day of the month is Tuesday. And Rabbi Yehoshua challenges the ruling, and Rabban Gamliel sends a message to him. I decree that you must appear before me with your staff and with your money on the day on which Yom Kippur occurs according to your calculation. Because according to my calculation, that is the 11th day of Tishrei, the day after Yom Kippur. So what's happening here?
The rabbis are fighting.
Right, Rabban Gamliel wants to kind of squash any dissent. And he says, if you come to me with money and with your staff on Yom Kippur, which are forbidden things, right, to be holding on Yom Kippur, right, he wants a decree to make a point to everyone. Look, this is not Yom Kippur. Rabbi Yehoshua is agreeing with me that this is not Yom Kippur because he's bringing these things. Rabbi Yehoshua was clearly very upset because how could he be being forced to do these things on the day he believes is Yom Kippur? So Rabbi Akiva went and found Rabbi Yehoshua distressed that the head of the great Sanhedrin was forcing him to desecrate the day that he maintained was Yom Kippur. In an attempt to console him, Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Yehoshua, I can learn from a verse that everything that Rabban Gamliel did in sanctifying the month is done, i.e. it is valid. As it is stated, these are the appointed seasons of the Lord, sacred convocations, which you shall proclaim in their season. The verse indicates that whether you have proclaimed them at their proper time or whether you have declared them not at their proper time, I have only these festivals as established by the representatives of the Jewish people. So I'm going to pause here for a second. What do you guys think about this idea? The Torah says you have appointed, right? God has appointed these days, but the days are based on our witnessing. So Rabbi Yehoshua believes that the day is really a day later, but ultimately 2 witnesses have declared the new month, and so we understand Yom Kippur to be a day earlier. So is there really a day that God decrees as Yom Kippur, or do we as a Jewish people decide and make this decree of when the day is? Any thoughts on this question? Who gets to determine which day is Yom Kippur? And furthermore, right?
The witnesses.
Yeah. Nelson?
The day is only important in our lives if we make it meaningful. So we have to act. The fact that God said this is the right day, and we don't know that, it's not meaningful to us. If it's going to be meaningful to us, we have to act. So I'd say that it depends on what we decide.
Right, and we'll go back to the end of the story, but this is really the principle in the Talmud, and actually I think somewhat of a radical principle for the rabbis to say our authority in some ways supersedes God, or at least God's will. There's a famous story, I think you've studied Tanur Shel Achnai, the oven of Achnai, where Rabbi Yehoshua, now it might be Rabbi Eliezer in the story, now I'm forgetting which rabbi, but basically the sages decree that this oven is acceptable, and the one rabbi disagrees and says, no, it's not, and I'll have these miracles performed to prove it to you, and all of a sudden, the miracles start happening to prove the rabbi's point. But ultimately, the larger group of rabbis say, doesn't the Torah say majority rules? And so even though it's very clear in the story that God's will is that this would not be acceptable, God rests, knowing that the rabbis are making their decision and they're determining, halacha. And here too, Rabban Gamliel, through the witnesses, is determining this is Yom Kippur and makes it holy for the people. Even if the real correct day, according to, what the moon looks like, really should be the following day. And Rabban Gamliel makes very clear, and the Talmud makes very, very clear, that ultimately it's the rabbis as a collective, the majority rules and makes decisions on, on Jewish law. So here I'll write, this is the end of the story. Rabbi Yehoshua then came to Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas. He was the one who originally questioned the witnesses. And Rabbi Dosa says, if we come to debate and question the rulings of the court of Rabban Gamliel, then we must debate and question the ruling of every court that has stood from the days of Moses until now. As it is stated, then Moses went up, and Aaron and Nadav and Avihu and 70 of the elders of Israel. But why were the names of these 70 elders not specified? Rather, this comes to teach that every set of 3 judges that stands as a court over the Jewish people has the same status as the court of Moses. Since it is not revealed who sat on that court, apparently it is enough that they were official judges in a Jewish court. When Rabbi Yehoshua heard that even Rabbi Dosa ben Horkinas, the person who said these witnesses were invalid, even he maintained that they still must submit to Rabban Gamliel's decision. Then he took his staff and his money in his hand and went to Yavne to Rabban Gamliel on that day, on which Yom Kippur occurred according to his own calculation. Upon seeing him, Rabban Gamliel stood up and kissed him on his head. He said to him, "Come in peace, my teacher and my student. You are my teacher in wisdom, as Rabbi Yehoshua was wiser than anyone else in his generation, and you are my student, as you accepted my statement despite your disagreement." So we're going to pause there. Rabbi Yehoshua was seen and is seen in the Talmud as really the brightest, the most learned person in his generation. But here, Rabban Gamliel recognizes his wisdom, but also his humility ultimately in submitting to the court, and seeing that even the person who had invalidated, said these witnesses weren't valid, was still willing to accept the court, because ultimately, if you don't accept the court, the whole system starts to crumble. And there's this text really shows that any Beit Din, any Jewish court, makes a principle. And once you start disagreeing on major facets of Jewish law and Jewish tenets, the whole system can start to crumble. And here, for instance, if I believed Yom Kippur was one day and you believed it was a different day, where would we be? Right? If our congregation was celebrating Yom Kippur on this day and the congregation down the street had a different day, we would start to lose the unity that we have as a Jewish people. And there already are enough challenges that we have, but as a people. But I think this text, is trying to recognize and demonstrating the importance of unity, and not, even if we have disagreements, coming to recognize in a common belief. So I want to turn it over if there's any last thoughts here before we wrap up.
Yeah.
So thank you. Does someone have the mic? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we're all saying Yasher Koch and thank you for,
Okay.
in spite of all your condition here.
Good. Thank you. Sorry about my kids. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing them come around. But wonderful. And we'll see you next week. Is our final Lunch and Learn before a summer hiatus, June 12th. And then we'll be on a break until mid-August. I know the dates are online or in our Tidings newsletter. But great to see everyone, and we'll see everyone next week. I would see here and hopefully sooner for Shabbat and at other times.